So let's add a diplomatic crisis to all of this. But according to your report, this entire calamity was all caused by one crew member.
He was an idiot.
How devoted a Star Trek fan are you? Even though you may be a committed Trekkie, you have to admit that there are flaws in the Star Trek plots that make things really uneasy. Have you already thought about those awkward Star Trek moments? Here are some notable instances of unsettling circumstances, awkward gaffes, absurd mission reports, and other situations that would have made characters feel extremely uneasy. Number 1. Barleys' soiled reputation. Though we've seen time and again, the holodeck is an ingenious tool that can be readily abused in some very unsettling ways. Holo addiction was first introduced in the Next Generation episode Holo Pursuits. Lieutenant Reginald Barclay's obsession with holographic dreams became so great that he completely avoided social situations and frequently arrived late for work. When LaForge finally tracked Barclay down, he discovered him engaging in a holodeck simulation in which he was dehumanizing and fighting holograms of his superior officers in a 17th century setting. LaForge attempted to assist him overcome his addiction and explained that it was strange to replicate actual individuals on the holodeck, but the behavior persisted and he was eventually caught in the act once more. The identical program was in operation when Riker, LaForge, and Troy broke in this time. However, they were met by the goddess of empathy, a sexualized version of counselor Deanna Troi, who was much in love with Barclay. Number 2. Archer's Cold Front Report. Among Captain Archer's most humiliating experiences of his career was Cold Front. This episode of Enterprise revealed that crewman Daniels was, in fact, a combatant from the 31st century fighting in the temporal Cold War. In the aftermath of the episode, Archer would have needed to defend Daniels' claim to be from the future, something the Vulcans at the time firmly felt was impossible, as well as his ability to conceal both his identity and his futuristic technology to Starfleet Command. Daniels was believed to have been slain after his futuristic technology, the temporal observatory, and his phasing device were both destroyed, leaving no proof of the account he provided. Hearing about Archer's revelation certainly surprised the Vulcan scientists and authorities much more than it did Starfleet. Their doubts about time travel were revisited later in the series, but some Vulcans must have suspected foul play, or at least an attempt by Archer to conceal the misdeeds of the most famous crew on Earth, given that Daniels was assumed dead before he could even be questioned. In other words, it would have been difficult to persuade those who weren't present that the Cold Front events and the temporal Cold War were real. Number 3. The problem with the Doctor's daydreams. Tinker. Tenor Dr. Spy, Seven, and B'Elanna uncovered a section of the Doctor's program in the Voyager episode, which most likely made a living on board the ship considerably more uncomfortable. In the episode, the Doctor gave himself the ability to daydream by adding a function to his program. Regretfully, his daydreams became erratic and unmanageable due to a hierarchy vessel tapping into them. Torres tried to fix him by tricking his dreams into the holodeck projectors so she, Janeway, Seven, and Kim could see them for themselves. They witnessed not just the Doctor fulfilling his more private fantasies, but also his dream of taking over Voyager and rescuing it. His other daydreams were splitting up with B'Elanna, who insisted that Tom Paris wasn't half the man the Doctor was, and painting a nude and sensually positioned Seven of Nine. The Doctor's fantasies appeared to have little effect on Seven of Nine. She even gave him a brief kiss at the end of the episode, clarifying that it was platonic. However, it's possible that he and B'Elanna had some awkward moments after she discovered his feelings for her and his jealousy of Paris. It's possible that she told Tom as well, which would create a strange dynamic if he helped out in sickbay. B'Elanna must have felt a little awkward knowing that her doctor harbored romantic feelings for her. Number 4. Picard readjusting to life on the Enterprise. Picard has experienced a great deal of terrible things in his life. Among other things, he was tortured by the Cardassians, stabbed by a Nausian, lost his mother while he was young, and assimilated by the Borg. However, the Inner Lights occurrences were arguably the most terrible experience in his life. In this episode, he spent several decades inside an extraterrestrial simulation, living a different kind of existence. Although the experience is brief in real life, he sees it as a whole different life, and the presentation does not fully convey the depth of his feelings. Perhaps the writers simply concluded that Picard had received enough counseling in the family episode following the Best of Both Worlds. Even so, it had to be some time before Picard was prepared to take command of the ship once more. He most likely took a long time off work to come to terms with what had occurred to him. He had been in the simulation for so long that he probably lost rules, regulations, and maybe even certain members of his crew and buddies. We can only hope that Picard was given some time to recuperate psychologically before rushing headlong into saving humanity. Number 5. The Hide Q report Starfleet Command probably wouldn't have approved of Riker handing up his Q power so fast after Hide Q. With such qualities, he could have accomplished much good for the Federation. He was capable of creating new technology to protect the Federation, curing any illness, and doing almost anything else. Rather, he used his talents to grant his buddies their wildest dreams for a short while before realizing they didn't genuinely need them. Command would have had to hear Picard and Riker's explanation that they turned down this fantastic opportunity only because they felt it was too much power for a human and because Riker didn't want to take the chance of revealing his true identity. The section, when Riker concluded that his humanity outweighed the life of this youngster, was probably left out. Number 6. The trouble with Tribble Disposal. Scotty beams the Tribbles straight onto the Klingon ship at the conclusion of the trouble with Tribbles, removing them from the Enterprise. There were so many things wrong with this. In addition to the possibility that this would have been sufficient to ignite a conflict, Scotty sentenced thousands of defenseless animals to horrible, agonizing deaths. As we know, Klingons hate Tribbles, and their invasion would very surely result in carnage. As they were hunted, the monsters would only grow more numerous, and the Klingons would eventually have to start eliminating them more quickly. It was unquestionably a complete bloodbath. To be honest, beaming the Tribbles straight into space would have been a more humanitarian course of action. Compared to the Klingons, who aren't exactly known for their kindness, their deaths would have most likely occurred more quickly. Number 7. Spock getting teased. When Spock's pals on the Enterprise found out about his Ponfar in the TOS episode Amok Time, they reacted rather responsibly. Regardless of how bizarre the Vulcan mating rites appear to humans, they would not make fun of him for something beyond his control. But when Spock realizes at the end of the episode that he hasn't killed Captain Kirk, he briefly shows his feelings by yelling Jim and grinning from point ear to pointed ear. He attempted to downplay it, but Nurse Chapel, McCoy, and Kirk witnessed what transpired. In this instance, Spock showed Kirk how much he cared for him, a sentiment he seldom expressed verbally. Number 8. Interstellar Traffic Cops. The next-gen episode Force of Nature, which demonstrated how warp travel was gradually destroying space, has been extensively discussed. At the conclusion of the episode, a warp 5 speed limit was implemented across the Federation space, with the exception of dire situations. As we've discussed previously, Starfleet never truly adhered to this restriction, and there was never a canonical solution to the issue. We haven't really discussed the idea that the Federation authorities would probably need to monitor their space, much like interstellar traffic cops, to apprehend any civilian spacecraft that exceeds the speed restriction. The captains of civilian freighters, whose earnings would very surely be reduced due to the Warp 5 limit, must have been furious. Who knows, maybe new technology could have minimized the harm soon after the episode. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, don't forget to hit that like button below. And if you want to stay updated with more great content like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel by clicking the red button and ringing the notification bell so you never miss any future content from us.